Welcome everybody to this very exciting summer virtual happy hour. I'm so pleased to have so many amazing women on this call, putting together a little event about why women should run, why it's important, and a little enthusiasm for my race. We're gonna hear a few remarks from Secretary Clinton, who is my former boss and taught me so many things and was such an inspiration to work for. We had some good days in the Senate and then even after on the trail in so many ways. So you are an inspiration and part of what prompted me to even make this big leap. So I'm excited you're here. And then after the Secretary has a few remarks and takes a few questions, we're gonna start a panel with some really amazing women doing really great stuff in our state. So I hope you'll stay on, ask your questions, get information, and we can hear about why it's better when women run, lead, and there's another word and I can't remember what it was, but yes. So Secretary Clinton, why don't you kick us off?
Oh boy, thank you so much, Sarah. I cannot tell you how happy and proud I am to be here in support of Sarah's campaign for the state assembly, and certainly in support of more women running for office in New York and across our country. As Sarah said, I was lucky enough to have her working with me during my 8 years in the Senate. We put a lot of emphasis on working to respond to people's concerns, working to help communities, particularly in upstate. And I spent a lot of time in Rochester and the larger area with Sarah by my side every step of the way. She was indefatigable. She never met a crisis or a problem that she didn't think could be addressed. She would be willing to go anywhere, to meet with anybody. She was so much on the front lines of our entire Senate team. I remember, for example, we had a terrible storm that particularly devastated Rochester and Buffalo and points in between. I think at the time, Sarah was 6 months pregnant. I said, well, you know, we're going to try to get up there. We want to see what we need. Got to get the disaster declaration, try to begin recovery. And, you know, I was trying to give her a way to say, well, you know, I'm 6 months pregnant. I think I'll stay home. But instead she said, well, I'm getting in my car. I'm going to drive to meet you in the middle of a, blizzard, which of course she did, and then was instrumental in everything we were able to do afterwards. I also remember during the big East Coast blackout that we were trying to make the case to save the VA. And, Sarah did not let something like a blackout stop her from going forward with a rally and meetings to try to make the case, which, we were able to, about the importance of the VA in the larger community and the services that it provided our veterans. So I can vouch personally for the kind of representative that Sarah would be. The people of Rochester and the entire district she would represent would be incredibly blessed to have someone of her energy, her commitment and dedication, and her can-do problem-solving experience. And I also believe that at this time in our country, we need people who are going to really respond to the needs of their constituents. We are in the midst of a continuing global pandemic and a, reminder of the continuing ravages of systemic racism and sadly the loss of life because of the problems that exist between our police and the communities that they should be working to serve and protect. So we need people in office who are going to be willing to ask the hard questions and then bring people together to come up with answers. And there's no doubt in my mind that Sarah would be the kind of representative that Greater Rochester has always needed and has had in the past. Before we went live, we were talking about the late, great Louise Slaughter, who loved Rochester and Monroe County and the entire area from Rochester to those parts of Erie County and Buffalo she represented with all her heart. Well, that's the kind of person that Sarah is. Passionate, engaged, effective. So I hope everybody on this Zoom meeting we're having will support Sarah, will contribute if you haven't already. We'll get out and make sure that everybody's voting, even though vote by mail will probably be the majority of votes. Make sure people get their questions answered about how they do that. So I'm thrilled not only to be here in support of Sarah, but you'll see in a few minutes some of these other terrific young women who are in office, who are supporting people running for office, because I think there isn't a single woman in the state delegation representing Rochester and Monroe County. And that means that you're leaving out, a little over half the population. So I hope everybody really wants to see representation that reflects the diversity of the people in the county and in the city, and will do everything you possibly can to help elect Sarah to be your next state representative.
Well, I couldn't ask for a better a better endorsement. You're a former boss, but also my inspiration. So that means so much to me in so many ways. I'm going to ask you just a couple questions, if you don't mind. First is, with all that is going on with both the COVID and the protests and stuff, can you share some thoughts on how, as a community, we move forward and how we heal?
Well, I think this has to be a community by community effort. Obviously, we need desperately leadership at our federal level, which we don't have now. So I think the burden is even greater on people coming together. And look, nothing replaces honest, open, candid encounters and conversation. I think a lot of people, like I was, were just heartsick at the pictures we saw of the way that Mr. Floyd was being treated, literally with that knee on his neck, despite his begging to be able to breathe. And we ask ourselves, why is this happening still? What is wrong that this still goes on in our country? And I hope that the people who are watching will not only support you, Sarah, but support the kind of reforms that we need in our criminal justice system, the kind of accountability and training that we need in our police systems, that they will be looking for answers. And this has broken through in a way that, honestly, I haven't seen many things in the past. We've had terrible incidents before. I spoke a lot about them during my 2016 campaign. I campaigned with the mothers of children who had been killed in police actions or by gun violence from civilians. So I have seen more of this than I wish ever. But what's been different about this is how police chiefs around the country have spoken up and spoken out about the absolute unacceptable behavior that they saw, how elected officials at all levels, regardless of party, are speaking out. So let's not let Mr. Floyd die in vain, or Breonna Taylor, or Mr. Aubrey, or anybody else that we have lost in the last few weeks. Let's try to recommit ourselves to living up to our most fundamental and best values and do our part to try to solve these problems so that no one else, no other family ever grieves again like we're seeing now. And we also have to support peaceful protest. people have a right to be in our streets, speaking out, holding signs, marching. But of course, that doesn't include violence. It doesn't include looting and theft, but I don't want to see the peaceful protests that are going on around our country being undermined by the actions of a small minority who are not following the kind of example that we should be about making our views known. And then, most importantly, voting for leaders who will actually listen and make a difference.
Absolutely. So last question, it looks again like we are not going to elect a woman president this year.
Maybe a vice president, let's hope.
Maybe. Do you have any advice for women who are thinking of running, want to run? Do you have a story to share from the trail or anything that you might want to give to all the women on my call and everyone else?
Well, look, Sarah, you are living it firsthand, as are the other panelists who have run for office, some successfully, some not, but nevertheless got out there in the public arena. There's a double standard. It's harder for women. That there's going to be continuing obstacles that are put in the pathway of women who run at all levels of government. But that just should spur us on to be even more determined to get out there and to make our cases, to be willing to put out an agenda, stand up for it, speak out for it, demonstrate what a difference your election can make. I wrote a whole book after that 2016 campaign called What Happened, and I have a chapter about women in politics. And I think it's clear that we were quite successful in 2018. A lot of women ran and won congressional seats, won state legislative and county and city seats. So we just have to get in the arena. And one thing that I hope is that more women will support women, because there really is a difference between women who lead in public life than their male counterparts. Very often they're focused on issues that have to do with the balance of family and work, with the healthcare needs that are specific to women, and so much else. And I have personally really been intrigued by the studies that have been done, pointing out that women leaders during this pandemic health crisis have actually done a better job on average, from New Zealand to Taiwan to Germany. They have led with empathy. They have followed the science. They have brought people together. That's the kind of leadership we need. And so don't get discouraged. Keep going and support candidates like Sarah, who will bring all of her experiences, including being a wife, a mother of 3 kids, an active volunteer, somebody who has been involved in politics and public policy. She'll put all that to work for you. And I think that's what you'll find with women candidates and women elected officials. We love to roll up our sleeves. We're maybe not the first one to seek out the camera. We're more likely to be in the back room talking to folks, trying to figure out what we're going to do together. And boy, do we need that now. And so let's keep supporting women, particularly young women.
Thank you, Secretary, so very, very much. I so appreciate you taking a moment out of your time to do this and just give me that little boost that I need as we hit the final stages of the next few weeks. So it really is so meaningful to me. So thank you.
Well, I hope everybody on this Zoom helps you, Sarah, because I personally would be delighted and honored to have you represent me in Albany. And since I don't live in your potential district, I'm hoping that everybody else who is participating will feel exactly the same way. And thanks to all the panelists you're going to hear from, because I know a couple of them, some personally, some by reputation, and you're in for a real treat.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a good
everybody.
one.
Thank you.
All right. So we are going to move into panel mode, and we have some really fantastic panelists here representing different groups and their own office and elected official capacity. So we have Luba from Vote Mama, who has an incredible story. We have Dorsey, who is on the board of Eleanor's Legacy, but also an elected official from Albany, and just doing her thing and making everything happen in Albany. And we thank you for joining, and we can't wait to hear your story. And we got Eversha, my county legislator, and the first Latina voted to Monroe County Legislature here in Rochester. We're gonna let them each introduce themselves, start out with a question to get the conversation going, but we hope that you'll put in any questions you have into the Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can as we talk about why it's important for women to run and lead. So I'm gonna start off. Lubo, you wanna go with that beautiful baby?
Thank you so much. Hi everyone, I'm Gretchen Shirley. This is Andrew, who's 5 weeks. And I'm the founder and CEO of Vote Mama. I ran for Congress last cycle on Long Island. And during my campaign, when I launched the campaign, I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I was the candidate that got the Federal Election Commission to approve the use of campaign funds for childcare. And this was critical for my campaign, and it changed the way that we get working people to even think to run for office. We need to get more moms in office. And right after my campaign ended, I ran against Peter King, came closer than anyone had in 25 years, and I launched Vote Mama. And we are an organization that works to train, mentor, support, endorse incredible mom candidates, Democratic moms with kids who are 18 or younger, running from school board up to Senate. Because when we change who has a seat at the table, we change the policies that we actually talk about. It's been proven that moms in Congress will actually introduce and pass 5 more pieces of legislation during their time in office. And it usually has to do with things like healthcare and reproductive rights and education and childcare and paid family leave. So we want to change who has a seat at the table, and that's what we're doing. We have supported almost 100 moms running across the country, and I'm so thrilled to say that Sarah is one of them, and I'm really excited about her campaign, and I'm just thrilled to be working with you. So thank you. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Dorsey, you ready?
I'm ready, Sarah, and thank you so much for this opportunity, a wonderful opportunity it is. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Dorsey Clears. I currently serve on the board with Eleanor's Legacy. I am a mom. I have an 18-month-old downstairs running around the house. I have a doctorate in public health. I am also an elected official in the city of Albany, and all of these lived experiences contribute to my voice being so essential at this moment, but not just my voice, the voice of so many women who wear so many hats, and that help to, because of our lived experiences, help to shape policy in a way that it's really impactful to everyday people. At Eleanor's Legacy, if you're not familiar with us, we recruit, train, and elect pro-choice women. We are unapologetic about that. When we had our inaugural founding event in 2001, Secretary Clinton was the honorary co-chair. And since that founding event, we have seen so many women hit the ground running for office and campaigning. And many of those women with babies on their hip. And we're proud to be able to support women and their families in these efforts. We are so proud to endorse Sarah Clark for Assembly. We need women leaders like Sarah at the table, and so we are proud and thankful to stand with her. The last 2 points that I want to make is that as a body, we do this work because we really firmly believe in what Eleanor Roosevelt, it takes women essentially to get things done. We know how to get things done. And lastly, I'll just add before we get into Q&A, as a chief city auditor, I understand that in order for things to count, it's about the numbers. And so I'm going to make a shameful plug that if you're listening, please make sure you complete your census. It's important that you make your voices count. So thanks again, Sarah.
Yay, thank you. And Eve Versha, my county legislator and trailblazer and new mom. We have two new moms who are literally holding babies right now on this call, which just warms my heart so much. So Eve Versha.
Hello, good evening. My days and nights are mixed with a 3-week-old, but good evening. My name is Eversha Roman. I am the county legislator for the 26th Legislative District. I'm excited to be here to really continue to talk about women in office. As many of you know, if you don't know me, this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I believe in diversity of voice, and I believe that representation matters. So to be having this conversation today, it warms my heart. I look forward to really talking about why it's important to have very diverse voices. Sarah kind of mentioned that I was the first Latina elected to Monroe County Legislature in over 100 years of a governing body being here in our county. And that's important for so many different reasons, but more so because you bring a different idea of what we should be talking about to the table. Your perspective is vastly different as a woman. Most of the time, I would say, in the conversations that we're having. I can share kind of a story of when I was running. I remember, you walk around the room, you introduce yourself to as many people as possible. I remember introducing myself to a judge. And she was a woman judge, and I think she kind of put it together pretty succinctly in her shock and in her kind of support of me running. So I said, "Hi, my name is Eversha Roman. I'm running for Monroe County Legislator." She said, she's a very funny woman. She said, "How are you doing that?" I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, you're not a white man." And I said, "Yeah, you are absolutely correct. I am doing it. I'm going to continue to push forward. And it's exactly the reason why I should be running." So I'm excited to see about 104 people on this call to talk about and support Sarah, women running, and hopefully a few choose to continue to run and support each other. So thanks.
So I think you guys all sort of answered some of these questions in your opening remarks, but in general, what are, if someone wants to run or a woman wants to run, what are the things? I think there's a couple things they can do ahead of time if it's a thought they are considering down the road. And Eversha, I know you've been through We Elect, and some of that comes up in those classes. But and I'm sure in Eleanor's legacy too, but what can women do to get started or start planning to run? What resources are out there if they choose to run? And what are still some of the barriers that women are really struggling to overcome? So I don't know who wants to take that first, but.
I can jump in. Happy to do so. So when I think about my own experience, I started with the Center for Women in Government, which is a program offered through the University at Albany. I was here in Albany as a graduate student and knew at the time that I wanted to be able to take policy and politics from an abstract concept to a very tangible thing that I could make my own. And I didn't quite know how to do that. And the fellowship helped me with that. And it also helped me to see women who were running for office, but also holding office. And then a woman asked me to run. But in terms of getting started, what was a good starting place for me was looking inward. This, as the secretary mentioned, and I'm sure the other women speaking will talk about, this is tough work. Campaigning is tough. Legislating and governing is tough work. It's a contact sport. And so even though I didn't know what I was getting myself into, thankfully, I knew that I needed to start with grounding myself, asking the question, why do I want to do this? And for any woman looking to do this work, you need to ask yourself, why do you want to do this in the first place? Now more than ever, we need women who want to do this work because it's really about saving other people's lives. We need women who are doing this work because they really want to fight and literally fight on behalf of their families, themselves, and everybody in their community, across the country, in the state. So you start there. Why do you want to do this? And then for me, once I personally was able to reconcile why I wanted to do this, I started to have the conversations with my closest family, my husband, my family members, to make sure that I would have the support in place to do this work. And I encourage each of you to strongly consider running and start at a place where you're able to set a strong foundation, because you'll need that strong foundation when things get extremely tough on the campaign trail. And then when you win, when things get extremely tough, when you are at the table fighting for your constituents.
Wonderful. Luba, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, making the decision to run, they always say that a woman needs to be asked at least 7 times before she really considers it. I have to say, if you're a mom with young children, it's 30 times or 40 times. And I had started an indivisible group early on, and I was working to hold my representative accountable. I was running against, at that point I wasn't, but Peter King was my representative and had been in office since I was 12, and had consistently voted to hurt people in my district and across the country. And I had no intention of running. I was an activist, and I worked in international development, and I had 2 small children. And when people started to ask me to run, I thought there's no way I can do this with small children. And I remember looking to other moms who had done it before and trying to reach out and to talk to them, because you really need that. You need that personal connection, and you need that support to see other people who look like you doing it. And I remember finding, a quote from Grace Meng or from Kirsten Gillibrand or from Secretary Clinton, and thinking, if they can do it, I can figure out how to do this with small babies. But it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I remember first launching my campaign. I had never run for office before. And when you're a mom with young kids, donors don't take you seriously. Voters don't take you seriously. The press doesn't. They don't think you have the time to do this. So you're working even harder than you would normally work if you were just running. And it's a very difficult thing to do. And that's why I launched Vote Mama after my campaign, because I kept thinking back to the first few days, the first few weeks, and really that support. And some of the moms who have been in office for so long were the most important people in my campaign. Those are the people who really made a difference. So when I launched Vote Mama, it was about making sure that other moms who were running had that place to go. And normally when you go to a PAC and you're trying to get support, you pretend everything is great with your campaign. You don't talk about what's really going on. When we do interviews, I can't tell you how many moms we had that had literally burst into tears during the call because they're talking about what's actually going on in their life. We had a mom burst into tears because her 14-year-old was mad that she couldn't take her to soccer practice. You need a safe place to have those conversations, and also to talk about, hey, how do I put my finance plan together? How do I hire staff? How do I handle voter outreach and build my field campaign? So if you're a mom and you're thinking of running for office, come to Vote Mama. We are training and supporting and endorsing and writing checks to these incredible moms who are running, because you need that safe place to talk to people about your policies, about your campaign, and about what it's like to really run, and the mom bias that you will face, because you will face a mom bias.
Thank you. Iversha, did you want to, I know you touched a little bit on it, but.
Yeah, I think it was just mentioned, right? One of the statistics I like to often share is that it takes a woman at least seven times to be asked to run for office. I think that kind of shows up in life in general, right? So women are less likely to apply for positions, to move up in the business world and corporate America, because we kind of second guess ourselves in our ability to lead. So really, I think it starts there, and kind of answering the phone call, showing up to events. I mean, a lot of us do a lot of different ways to support our community already, and kind of just validating yourself and how active you are already in the community and what you are doing. Because I can tell you that our counterparts often do far less and make it further because they believe in themselves a bit more. So really just trying to figure out how we can find the capacity to believe in our ability to lead and to have a voice, though our voice may sound different or isn't what is heard currently.
Wonderful. I have another one to ask, but there is one that came up in the chat room that I thought, Iversha, you might be fantastic at answering, which is, what do women who run for office, what do they do when they get a terrible attacks from within their own party?
Nice. Yeah, I was just reading it. So I really think that this has to do with you kind of understanding, I think Darcy said, right, really evaluating yourself in the beginning, you know, who you are and why you're running. I think is extremely important. Just having that moment to really figure out why you choose to run. Politics is politics. Sometimes I don't even like that phrase because there are certain parts and aspects to it I don't find are political. I think they are personal. I think they are ugly. I think they don't have space in making change in our community. I think we could spend a lot more of our effort to make actual change if we didn't have some of those attacks. So for me personally, I did run for the same you know, position twice. I was unsuccessful, if you will, the first time around, but I can tell you the first time around taught me a lot. It taught me a whole lot and allowed me to be successful the second time around. So, you know, if it happens, it may happen, it may occur. I'd say the second time around was actually a lot more difficult for me. When you talk about inter-party issues, the first time I was kind of the chosen one. The second time I wasn't, per se. But I felt that the representation was necessary, and there was a lot of the people in the community who felt the same way. So I knew that it wasn't just about me, it was about the community that I was hoping to represent. And really just, luckily I had a support system, I had something within myself that allowed me to understand that some things aren't as serious as they seem in the moment. And I just had the conviction to keep moving forward.
Thank you. And Luba, you touched on it a little, but one of my questions that I was going to ask is what difference women make when they're at the table, and particularly as moms of young children. What do you see some of the issues that are championed that are different? What styles do you see? Why is it important?
We are right now, we're one of two countries in the world without paid family leave. Papua New Guinea is the other. We're 27th in education. We're 27th in healthcare. It is literally more expensive to send our infants to daycare than it is to send our teenagers to college. These are all issues that we need to be focused on, that we're not focused on. We had, a few years ago, we had representatives vote to take maternity coverage away from 13 million American women, and we have the worst maternal mortality rate in the developed world. And this is something that we need more moms in office to change. If you look at Congress right now, it's less than 5%. Less than 5% of our representatives are moms with kids who are 18 or younger. And the reason we need moms who have younger children, who are kind of in the thick of things, is because even if you have grown children, you start to forget how difficult it was. And you need people who are living these issues every day, who actually understand them at a visceral level. I remember during my campaign trying to get my child into a childcare situation and having him hysterical crying and having to go pick him up and go back and balance a baby and do call time. And it is incredibly difficult. My son broke his leg during my campaign, and I ended up nursing a baby in a cast. He was in a body cast. He broke his femur during that campaign. And I remember being in the operating room with him, and literally as I came out, as he was getting his leg set, the nurse and the doctor were talking to me about what our insurance was going to cover and what it wasn't going to cover. And they had a social worker come over. And I remember I was crying and talking to my husband, and I said, well, this is why we need Medicare for all. And she said, if you had Medicare, this would be one call and it would all be taken care of. And it's literally in that moment. I remember sitting in my office with 3 different cell phones on speaker, arguing with my insurance company, with the doctor, with the surgeon, and trying to make sure that our healthcare was even going to cover that. Those are the issues that moms focus on: healthcare, education, childcare. And these are the issues that we need to champion. And it's been proven in so many studies that moms in office will focus more on these issues. And it's more difficult to get women into these positions because it is. I mean, as your brochure was saying, it's difficult to get women in that perspective where they're going to say, I'm going to step up and I'm going to run with small children, because you will face that criticism, and we need to overcome that and support these incredible women who are running. And that's how we start to change the conversation at the table.
Thank you. Dorsey, I know you talked a little bit about searching internally and with your family and friends, but did you always want to go to politics? Did you see yourself on a different path? Was there anything that prompted you to sort of say, oh, nope, I got to do this? And, what made you decide to do that, and how did you end up where you are?
Yeah, so my background is in public health, and I ended up in Albany, as I mentioned, for graduate school. And I saw myself influencing policy in some way, but not as a legislator. So when asked, I immediately wondered, why me? Why would someone even ask me to run for office? I did not, even though I grew up in Washington, D.C., not too far from the White House, as a community, we didn't talk about civic engagement and influence in policy. So it just seemed like a foreign concept. Um, but I'm so thankful that Judith Maza, who is a mentor of mine, asked me to run, who saw something in me and was very adamant that I was the person that this community needed. I wanted to highlight, and I had so many different experiences on the campaign trail that were just shocking, because you hear about people saying, you know, as women, you get discriminated against. But I had a few, two incidents I'll just highlight briefly. One in which I was out campaigning with a colleague of mine who was a white man, and we were shaking hands in the community, and one gentleman shook his hand very firmly and said, you know, I hear what you're saying, I can stand behind that. And then when I went to shake his hand, he said, oh, who are you? Are you running to be his secretary? And one, I had to collect myself. I just really wasn't expecting that. And the audacity for him to think that I was running to be anybody's secretary, number one. The second incident, I was out campaigning with my husband, and a gentleman yelled, I can't even call him a gentleman, some man yelled, take your black bitch home. While trying to collect myself and trying to keep my husband from ripping him to shreds, again, I came home and really thought about, you know, what am I doing? And you have to have tough skin campaigning and doing this work. The last thing I want to highlight, if I am able to, is this notion of why women are so important. One, we know how to get things done. And to Luba's point, last year I had the baby, and in addition to having the baby, childcare fell through. I found myself new in a job, 2 weeks on the job, no childcare, and I'm an elected official, part-time. And in the midst of all of that, my dear mother passed away. It was, I can say, one of the most challenging years of my life. And despite all of that going on, I was still able to push through and show up. And I would strap Noble to my belly and stand up on stages and sit on panels and still do what I needed to do. That's what women do. Despite all that we have juggling, and we invented multitasking. We know how to show up and get things done. And then in addition to getting things done, we do so with compassion. We have children, and when you have babies, you are able to see someone else as somebody else's baby. And just in that alone, you show a compassion and a love for other people, because you know that that person is somebody else's child. So I'm going to get off my soapbox because I can keep going. But Sarah, this platform is so important for women because we are able to have candid conversations about what it really means to be a woman and do this work.
It is. And Eversha, one of the questions that came up too was about age and being taken seriously. And it is hard when you do have young children, but I also sometimes think when you are a mom, you do get maybe a little bit of it, extra sometimes as a mom. But what if Eversha, you're very young. You ran before you were a mom and won. Did you feel like people took you seriously? Was that still a struggle? And then all three of you can answer, what can other women do to help support other women who are running?
I think that's a great question. I do think age plays into it, more so for women than for men. I couldn't imagine, unfortunately, I couldn't imagine being elected, at 26. I had a really difficult time being elected at 30, and then again at, 34. I knocked on doors, and not oftentimes, enough, I received feedback like, oh, I can't wait to have a 12-year-old legislator. That was actually told to me at a door. I don't think our male counterparts receive that same kind of feedback. So one of the things that I would say is just be you. I learned that my second time around running. Be you, see how you contribute to the community, see what you can bring to the position. Oftentimes I think we choose to kind of run on our resumes because we're proving ourselves to someone. But there's more than just, your education. We all have lived experiences. And I think those are truly invaluable when it comes to running for office. First time around, I would say I ran on having an education. I ran on being articulate. I don't even know what I was running on, to be truthfully honest. I was running because I believed I should be in the position. Second time around, I ran because I believed in myself for the position. And I think it's really trying to figure out how to share that story and share your ability, regardless of age, right? So, I purchased a home at 25, 26. That doesn't happen. I've been living in the neighborhood for a really long time. I've gone to school up the street. My lived experiences were vastly equal to the person I ran against, outside of the fact that maybe he was double my age. But we're both as valuable in the seat. So I'd say, and I challenge, I think it's Sarah who asked the question, another Sarah, it looks like, that just look at the other people who are in the roles, and you'll see, that there are people probably younger than you who have been successful and will continue to be successful in it.
Wonderful. And Luba and Dorsey, do you want to talk about how women can support other women and what you found?
Yeah, one of the things we're actually working on with Vote Mama is getting states to approve the use of campaign funds for childcare. So when I got the FEC to approve this, we've actually seen now 38 federal candidates take advantage of this and actually use their campaign funds for childcare, but it doesn't work for state candidates unless each state approves it. So we've now worked with candidates across the country and with electeds across the country to pass this legislation. 17 states have now approved it, and we're working to get all 50 by 2023. This is something that if you want to help get moms elected, if you want to help get women elected, come work with us with Vote Mama, because we are making sure that you have an opportunity. We need to get working people into office, and we need to get working moms into office. And this is the first real major financial structural barrier that has been broken down in a long time to actually allow people to run. I would not have been able to continue my campaign without getting this passed. And we have talked to moms across the country who've told us that they also would not have even considered running for office if they weren't able to use their campaign funds for childcare. We actually worked with Morgan Lamondre, who was running for a state seat in Baton Rouge. And she put this request in, and their ethics commission had actually approved it for 4 men in the past. And they said no to Morgan. And the exact quote was from a man in his 70s. And he said, "You have misplaced priorities, and your primary responsibility is to take care of your children." And we worked with her on the appeals process. She won. And now Louisiana is one of the states that has approved it. So this is a way to get more moms into office and to make it easier. You can contribute to incredible candidates. Please make a contribution to Sarah's campaign. Help get Sarah elected. Go online right now. We should have one of your staff put the link in the chat box so everyone can go and make a contribution. Get involved with Eleanor's legacy. Get involved with Vote Mama. Help us pass this legislation and help us continue to elect these incredible women that we're supporting across the country.
Dorsey, how have women helped you, and how can we help more women besides just financially?
And I talked about the ask. That ask is so critical. Had Judith not asked me, I would not be sitting here talking with you today. But also, it is providing that behind the scenes support. When I was campaigning, there were women who said, "You have a debate, we're going to sit at the kitchen table and get you prepped." you have children, I'll watch the baby so that you can go do what you need to do. That's the type of support that helps get us across the finish line, because we do need that extra level of support. And then also looking in your community to recruit women to not only run for campaigns, but work on campaigns. That is so key to helping get Sarah and other women elected, is having a cadre of women who are willing to go to war and be at the doors and make phone calls on behalf of the candidate. So those roles are vital, whether you are the candidate or supporting the candidate. All of that is necessary. And then to the point I made about the unseen support, being a cheerleader, to say, you, even in those moments when you feel like you just are at your capacity, you can do this, and we need more women being those cheerleaders.
And I have to say, running now, Eversha's gotten a few of my phone calls of like, this just happened. Am I reacting wrong? What do I do? Is this crazy? And Eversha is one of many, many women that I call when these things happen. And sometimes it's, you need some advice or thoughts, but sometimes you just need to vent. There's been a lot of talk of men who mansplain a lot, or are, you know, and oftentimes these are the same men that say they care about getting women elected, and they really often then don't even realize that they take over rooms. They do kind of sometimes belittle or make you feel like you're not as important or as qualified, or whatever the role may be. So I don't know if anyone wants to share experiences like that, but it is a real thing. And my only advice on that is having that kitchen cabinet, that just group of people that you can go to. And sometimes it's just so you can scream for 5 minutes, because it is real. And there's also a question too about women often being a sandwich generation, dealing with older parents and kids. For me, it's also the mental load. Like my husband is very good at compartmentalizing. When he's working, he's working. Even when our 3 children are now homeschooling, he can sort of tune it out, and I cannot. It is so hard for me to just shut that piece off. And so I constantly feel like I have to answer every question that comes my way. I constantly feel like I have to respond and deal with everything. So I don't know how all of you deal with your mental loads and being the caregiver in so many different ways, not just to kids, but to parents often. We can share that and then maybe wrap up. So.
I guess I'll speak. So I think that kind of goes with trying to figure out how to run for office. So like I said, I have run for office twice, but I also have been working on campaigns for about 15 years, now a little bit more than that. So I do have a little bit of experience on seeing candidates, you know, throughout the years, and kind of some of the things they've done to help and support them. So my first time I ran, I'll give just an example. I have a fantastic support system. Actually, my mom and my fiance are whispering in the background right now, so try not to disturb the fact that I decided to hang out at the dining room table. But the first time I ran, I'll give the story of my mom. My mom knocked doors, just knocked doors. She knocked doors and did what we had to do to get on the ballot, did what we had to do to you know, be successful. The second time we ran, we had a conversation as a family to kind of figure out what would work best for me, or for us, and for my support system. And really what that looked like was my mom came over every Friday and we cleaned the house. And that was the best thing that probably happened for my campaign. It didn't equate voters or votes, but it allowed me to do the things that I needed to do at home, so that Saturday morning I could walk from 10 to 6 and there would be kind of no issues or concerns or any of those kinds of things. So really, I would say, because there's questions in regards to kind of learning how to run, or figuring out what to do if you're kind of a sandwich generation. It's really trying to figure out what works best for you, and your campaign is not going to look like anyone else's, because of the reality of your family, your support system. The number of dollars you can raise are going to look vastly different for everyone, right? So if you can just get people to give $20, and just as $20 is $20, go out and get those $20. It adds up. It adds up. I'm not from wealth, but we raised a lot of money for a local race, and we were successful. And I think everyone can do it. I mean, if I could, I believe that anyone can. So, thanks.
Luba?
I don't know if I can answer how to juggle the mental load, because I have never, I mean, that's just a man versus woman thing. My husband's the same way. He can just focus on one task, and I'm doing a million things at once. And I think that's what makes women better legislators, to be honest. I don't think we should worry about how to deal with the mental load, because I can answer a million questions because my son never stops talking, and there's a new game every 3 seconds, while working, while talking to voters, while talking to donors, while doing everything. I mean, I gave speeches with a baby strapped to my chest all the time. And I think that's, we get it. We understand what everybody else's life is like. And that's why we need more moms in office. I mean, in terms of what my mom did during the campaign, she didn't knock doors, but she watched my children. And there is no way that I would have survived that campaign. My mom is retired now, but when I was running, she was in her last 2 years of being a teacher. And I had the kids during the day, and she'd come home at 3:30 and she'd take the kids. And my husband, commutes to the city and works long hours, so he didn't get home till late. And I would never have survived the campaign without my mom and my husband. And, my mom would take them on the weekend, and they'd come visit me in the office, and they'd come to events with me, and she'd drive them around to different events. And it was necessary. It really does take a village to run for office. It is a full-on family contact sport, and you need the support. It's hard. And you need that, as Dorsey was saying, to have that group of women behind you, just helping out. I had, before we were able to get the campaign funds for childcare and hire a part-time babysitter, we had people who were volunteering. I can't go out and knock doors, but I'll come over and watch your children. And that's necessary. And while I have all of you guys on this call right now, I'm actually going to make a request. You don't have to answer it right now, but Versha and Dorsey, we would love to have you join our advisory committee and help mentor other candidates that are running. And Sarah, when you get elected, we're also going to ask you to join our advisory committee, because what you have that experience, and we would love to have you mentor the other candidates, because to talk to someone else who has been through it before, that's literally what you need. Sarah, you're talking about venting. We will be texting with candidates in the middle of the night because something terrible happened and somebody said something awful to them, and they need to just vent about it. It's so important to have a safe space to vent about it, and to have someone who's done it before and who's heard all the ridiculous comments. So we would love to talk to you guys about joining our advisory committee.
Wonderful. Dorsey, do you have any words on this? And then I can do a little wrap up.
Sure. In addition to what was said, I think it's important to yell out when you are in need and what you need. I used to be that person. I was so busy accommodating everybody else's needs. And when I had needs, I just kept them to myself, because I felt that it was more important to be there and show up for everybody else. And I've had to learn in this stage of my life that you have to articulate what it is you need from people, period. The other thing is, as women, we need to be patient and flexible with ourselves, and understand that things are fluid. Our emotions are fluid. Some days I'm on and some days I'm not. And I recall beating myself up so many times the days I was not on. Oh my gosh, did I say that at a council meeting? I can't believe I did that. And really just replaying it over and over and over again. And the truth of the matter is, we're human and life is fluid. And so you're going to have your on days and your off days. And that's just how it is. And then the last thing I'll say is, learn to set some boundaries, healthy boundaries for yourself. Although we can be super women all day long, we do have to take care of our bodies physically and our minds mentally. And I recall I was at a council meeting about 3 weeks from my delivery date, And a colleague of mine had the audacity to ask me if I was going to show up 2 weeks after the baby to vote on the budget. Absolutely not. I will not be here to vote on the budget. People were calling me while I was on maternity leave to speak at rallies. And I had to really, despite my passion to want to be with the people, I had to take care of my own home and my new child. And so I was very clear that board involvement, civic engagement, that had to stop with this new life that I had. And so I encourage you to set those healthy parameters for yourself.
Oh, thank you all for your words of wisdom and your support, all of you. I am blessed to have Eleanor's Legacy and Vote Mama as part of my endorsements, and your message is so meaningful to me. I almost cried when I got the Planned Parenthood endorsement, because even as a young teenager, that was sort of all my interest in politics had started from that deep-rooted support for Planned Parenthood. So I did almost tear up when I got it. So all of it is so meaningful to me. I have found, even in this world of not being able to go door to door, women are saving my campaign right now. The things we can do most, you know people. Women know lots of people. And the ask I've always given to people who maybe can't contribute money or have already and want to do more is introduce me to 5, 10, 20 of your friends in the district. It matters when it comes from you. It's harder when it comes from me. But people that you trust, people who you work with. For Eversha, I had my neighbors and tried to get a bunch of other women over to my house when she was running. We have these networks, and that is what makes us really strong and really a different kind of candidate. I know there's also a lot of men on this call who we appreciate all that you do, and I can't thank you enough for joining and listening to us talk about some of our struggles as women candidates and why it's important to run, but we do appreciate all that you bring to our world as well. And then the only other thing I would say is, obviously I'm running, I'm a progressive Democrat running. I live in the city of Rochester. I care about education and healthcare, the environment a lot, but I also, my experience in the city, my experience in the city schools and in urban education, I have so much passion around social justice. One of my taglines is, I was working in the Senate when 9/11 happened and when the 2008 collapse happened. And here we are again in a huge crisis. And I want to put my experience to work to make sure we recover for people and families, not banks and stockbrokers and stock buybacks and the Dow. We've done it wrong twice. We need better elected officials who will do it right. So that's why I'm running. And I don't know if you have any closing lines or anything else you want to say, but I'm so appreciative. I know we've got a 6-week-old and a 3-week-old home with 2 of our panelists, and Dorsey, an 18-month-old, right? So thank you. I am so appreciative to have you all in my world and your support. So I don't know if you have any closing lines.
Thank you. Please support Sarah's campaign and go donate and vote, please.
Yes, please vote if you can.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to support you, and everybody donate, and then also sign up to make calls. Call everybody. I don't know if you have the link to sign up to get phone bankers, but put that up there and everybody sign up.
It is in our links, and calls are working. People are actually answering their phones right now.
I'm glad to hear it.
They are. Just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this conversation, Sarah. Thank you for truly living this and supporting women running for office. Thank you for running. It takes guts. It takes courage to run. And I appreciate you being here. So looking forward to the next 20 days. Who's counting?
Oh yes, I feel like there were a lot of unanswered questions, which means this is a hot subject for a lot of people. We will find more ways to keep this conversation going. It is so important. So thank you all for joining, who listened in. It's just been so meaningful to have a lot of support, and I think it's great to be a woman running. So go us.
Yeah.